Okay, Bobby, go ahead and kick us off.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Blockchain Employee Summer event. This is the third of a four-part series. So we're trying to match qualified applicants with great blockchain jobs. So this is hosted by the Linux Foundation. So we have to abide by the antitrust policy, which is being displayed on your screen. So please take a moment to read that over. It's just how to act on a group call. And this call is being recorded. So as I said, this is the third of a four-part series, which the final part is on August 24th. And that's going to be a job fair where we meet together with the applicants and the employers. So that should be interesting, and we'll have more about that in a minute. It's hosted by a bunch of us from the Hyperledger Meetup groups. Myself, I'm Bobby Mascara, Jim Mason, who should be on the call shortly. We have John Carpenter, and we don't have Narish today. I think we have, correct me if I'm wrong, excuse me?
Narish will be joining in sometime.
Okay, Narish will be, Narish will be joining in a moment. So we've been working for a few months to put this together for everybody. So again, the first one was in Denver, and John led a panel discussion with people from Accenture, Hyperledger, and Kaleido. Narish gave a little information on how to get educated for these jobs, and I just gave a little blockchain basics as to what these jobs kind of look like. And the next one, we had employers come. We had people from Google. We had some people who were job recruiters and people who partner with clients to fill their pipelines, talk about like what they want in qualified employees. So this session we're going to talk about how to get yourself ready for the jobs. We have a great panel of experts from awesome companies that are hiring in blockchain. And so they can absolutely tell us what they're looking for in new hires and how they're finding them and all great stuff. So we have a couple questions for them in the panel. And then again, the Indian Blockchain Institute is going to talk about how to get trained for these great positions. And at the end, I'm going to show you my tricks for getting organized for job searching that makes it painless. It's a great trick. So moving right along, I'm going to turn it over to John Carpenter, and he's going to introduce the panelists and get started on some questions.
Great, thanks, Bobby. I really appreciate it. I see Jim's joining us. So Jim, maybe you want to come off and turn on your video. That'd be great. And then what I would like to do is, since we're going to do a little deeper dive into what companies in the blockchain space are looking for, I just kind of would let the audience know a little bit about your individual backgrounds. So let's go ahead and just kick it off. And Josh, you want to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background about yourself, and also talk a little bit about what Accenture is doing in the blockchain space.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Josh Kraus, and I'm based out of Chicago, which is experiencing a ton of humidity this time of year. So hopefully you guys are staying dry and staying warm. I've been in our blockchain practice, or working rather, maybe in the blockchain space within Accenture for the past 3 or 4 years now, focused primarily on our supply chain use cases and clients, but we're focused kind of broadly across the patch, like many companies are in the space, looking not only at supply chain, but also financial services and digital identity as well. So Accenture, with those kind of 3 main offerings, tries to look for opportunities to create value for our clients. And yeah, we tend to structure all of our offerings and kind of bucket our talent within those 3 primary roles. We do also have, for folks who are a bit more technology minded, we do have kind of a persistent, horizontal capability that sits across all of those offerings, focused on building out relationships with blockchain vendors, looking at startups, and kind of looking at what's next and what's new in this exciting space. So that's just kind of a high level on how we're structured, and happy to get into a bit more detail on some of these other questions around how you can assess, what a good fit would be, and how you know, as an individual can get a bit more competitive for role depending on what you're looking to get into.
Perfect, Josh. Thanks for that. Grace, I know you're involved with a lot on the Hyperledger side, but you're with Consensus. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, what's going on at Consensus and some of the things that also you're looking for as far as integration with Hyperledger.
For sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. So I'm Grace Hartley. I'm the head of the strategy and operations team for the protocols team at Consensus. I've been with Consensus almost 3 years, and a lot of my work is focused around strategic partnerships, including Hyperledger, MasterCard, and JP Morgan as well, and internal operations for our team. I've been here for almost 3 years, and I come from a consulting background, actually. So I worked at KPMG as a financial services risk consultant prior to joining Consensus. So I will be happy to talk about my transition and how I kind of found blockchain from kind of a different industry. For Consensus, though, so Consensus is the leading Ethereum software provider. So we have a suite of Ethereum-based products, so the Ethereum blockchain, to be clear. And we all work on different products, including Infura, MetaMask, Codify, if you've heard of any of those, as well as Truffle and Diligence. So we kind of cover the whole spectrum of Ethereum products. And then my team focuses on protocols. So what we do is basically we like to make Ethereum enterprise ready. So we have, and we call ourselves the Quorum team. So we have two flavors of enterprise Ethereum that we develop. One is the Go Quorum codebase, which was originally developed by JP Morgan and was acquired by Consensus last year. And the other is Hyperledger Besu, which is the Hyperledger project written in Java and Apache 2 licensed. So we like to think of ourselves as kind of providing this enterprise lens to Ethereum, and our work is kind of marrying kind of the Ethereum Web3 mainnet ecosystem to the enterprise blockchain ecosystem, and that's where Hyperledger fits in as well. But excited to talk to y'all.
Perfect, Grace. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Jim Mason, you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself and talk a little bit about what your company is doing in the blockchain space as well?
Yes, I'm actually a contract blockchain practice leader, a weirdo title, but I'm working with a company, primarily Paramount Software at this point, and still do some independent projects, but most of our focus has been around Hyperledger Fabric and a whole variety of different solutions, which is, I'll call it probably the leader in what I call enterprise high volume transaction blockchain solutions out there today as a platform. And then I've also done some work. I managed a self-sovereign identity project for the state of Rhode Island last year based on Indie Aries that also worked out well, and have been in the blockchain space for a while, since like 2017, which is, I guess, not millions of years old, but in the blockchain years, it's like dog years. That counts a lot. I think blockchain years and dog years are the same thing. So the other thing that's interesting is I didn't expect to be part of any of this, to have anything to do with jobs. And unfortunately, it turns out that I actually need to hire, but my hiring is not really on Fabric right now. It's going to be focused on really, I'll call it the supporting services, if you will, on the server side. What's interesting to me about this whole process that we're in, and appreciate having the expertise of the other speakers on the panel tonight, for sure, is that I've been a hiring manager, I've been somebody who was hired, and I've sort of had every role you can ever have in relation to technical employment, for sure, in many different organizations, companies, IBM, Fidelity, Citizens Bank, all kinds of, plus small startups and medium-sized companies. So I have many, many different lenses to look at this stuff. The number one, I guess, thing that I guess elevates my I'll put it blood pressure is what I call bad job descriptions. So hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about some of that today too.
Good. Yeah.
Because most of us are what I call roadkill when you get a bad job description that's poorly written. So I don't know about the other panelists, but I'll say at this point, I consider myself an expert on how to write a job description properly. And I don't see a lot of good ones out there for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect point, Jim. And I think let's definitely focus on that as part of our discussion. One thing I think was brought up was perfect was Grace talking about the journey. And I think anytime we're talking about, recruitment and hiring, there's a point where a person makes that transition and that journey to get into the blockchain space. So Grace, maybe you want to just talk a little bit about that before we kind of get into these other questions. And then, Josh and Jim, if you want to talk about the journey, that would be helpful as well.
It's always funny because I love to ask candidates what their journey is because it's always a little different. And I think that's probably worth mentioning first is that it's okay that everyone's coming from different lenses. There's no one right path and there's many different routes you can take. Please don't, if you're coming like me, I came from a different industry and honestly just kind of looked up. I decided blockchain sounded cool and I didn't have experience. I think it's a very interesting. But I think what's interesting is while I didn't have industry experience, I had role experience. And I think sometimes people really get intimidated by the blockchain world. And really, though, you have lots of great experience. It's very relevant. So for me, I had a consulting background, which really fit into the role that I came into. And then I learned the blockchain as I started and as I've gone over the years. I think when you are thinking about that process for you, I would encourage not being intimidated, not being like, oh, because I'm not a blockchain expert or I haven't been in this space for years, I'm not a good fit. You absolutely are. You have so many things to bring to the table. And I also think blockchain really, particularly at Consensus, we're really thinking about, it's not just building the technology, but it's building the business. And how are we thinking about building this blockchain business? And many people have skills that are very relevant to that. And not just, oh, I've built a DLT before and I, am able to build a blockchain network or anything like that. I think just don't feel, my recommendation in the journey is that everyone's journey is different, which is very normal. There is no right way, and you always have something to bring to the table, and getting these other experiences that even aren't, blockchain related actually will be applicable. And you can say, we really need someone who's great at customer success this week, or we need and has that experience, even if it's not in the blockchain industry, or we really want people with engineers with, Java experience, and we don't really find that in Ethereum, but we find that in other enterprise spaces, all those sort of things. Like I just, don't knock yourself until you go through the process, and you always can bring something to the table and your experience is relevant. And I think sometimes people just don't get intimidated is really my point, because anyone, particularly Consensus, there is no like blockchain experience required, and we do look at roles and experiences that hopefully kind of that will build the team, from a different lens as well, not just kind of people who've been in the space for years and years. But yeah, I'd love to hear the other thoughts though.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Grace, and that makes perfect sense. So, and I think that's a lot of great encouragement for those who are joining the call here to really know that, you don't have to be a DLT expert out of the gate to be making a difference in the blockchain space. So, Josh, you want to talk a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Grace brought up a lot of good points, and I'm smiling because not only in kind of conversations from a hiring perspective, but also just in team trainings on, new DLT topics and things like that, we always have a pre-survey that says, asks team members to rate their kind of comfortability on certain topics. And it's almost a joke at this point that no one actually puts a full 10 out of 10 because you're always learning, and there is really no such thing as an expert, or at least maybe if they're out there, right? There's very few and far between. I think a personal anecdote, maybe to just add kind of value to what Grace had said, is my own background was within supply chain, and that was really kind of what got me excited. Through school and then early work experience, supply chain was a huge focus of mine, and thought it was a growing space, thought it was very interesting. And that was actually the way that I got into, seeing a lot of new vendors in the space and seeing that there was a lot of discussion around this kind of new technology. And that's the, maybe avenue through which I kind of got into the space. And I think, when I'm talking with people, that's how I encourage a lot of folks, especially those who are, still kind of trying to figure out what their specialization is, or maybe what story they want to have from kind of as they're stringing together their either career or school experiences, is, everyone has a kind of different angle that they're approaching it from. Maybe you have an industry kind of depth that you wouldn't really, think of otherwise, or maybe you come from a specific work style or work experience that is super valuable, especially within Accenture, as a consultancy. A lot of times, I'd like to remind folks, almost, replace blockchain with any other emerging or new technology. Really, the core of what we're trying to do is better understand our clients' problems, and the more empathy that we can build with clients, the better and the easier it is for us to kind of eventually get to a solution with them. What's key empathy is not necessarily that you're, read up on every, latest development and the technology inside and out. That's important, and that's, a critical part of delivering value in this phase. But understanding the client's problem and showing that, you are not just, bringing a solution to them and looking, or you're bringing a technology to them looking for kind of a problem that fits. Instead, you're listening to what their problems are, and you're kind of co-creating, collaborating with clients on how to reach a solution. So I encourage a lot of people to, figure out kind of the industry or the, kind of vertical alignment that you would have, and think of that as another angle or another way to get in to the blockchain space, if that's what's interesting to you. So just, to another way, I guess, maybe for folks to look at the experiences that they've had to date.
Yeah, that's perfect, Josh. And I agree with you that supply chain is a great component of a blockchain use case, and really focusing on that area is perfect.
Yep.
So Jim, I know you have a lot of development experience, so maybe you can talk about your journey to blockchain and what you're seeing,
The journey to blockchain?
or journey to where you are now, and how you decided to look at blockchain as a core focus, and you look at your team that you're building out.
So Bobby, is this the point where I can ask the moderator of the panel why he asked a bad question? Because nobody wants to know how I got where I am. That's like another year discussion, so we're not going to go there. But it's too long and a waste of time, I think, for everybody. Don't follow my roadmap. Maybe Josh or Grace maybe recommend the same thing. What I will say, though, when you're thinking about blockchain, it's a great question to move to Grace and Josh as well, because my curious thing is most of us don't start out looking at blockchain. In fact, actually, I just talked to somebody this week who's a college student who actually interned somewhere for an AI company. He's saying, hey, blockchain's interesting. It's like, well, that's probably the wrong way to go there, is because you read an article and heard it's interesting. It's far better to be, and Josh mentioned it earlier, take a problem domain that you're working in, right? So you've got two big firms here that are both doing good stuff. Blockchain in itself, fine. If you want to be the narrow guy that finds a better consensus algorithm for somebody, then yeah, you can be deeply focused on just an algorithm with a larger framework. But I say the vast majority of us, no matter whether we're technologists or we're project managers or QA people or sales people even, whatever we're doing, so we're solving problems as part of a team. And most of us are, in a sense, not building the blockchain platform itself. We're using the blockchain platform in the right way to solve a business problem. And so what I see is real gaps all over the place. And and again, I'm badly biased, having lived through this cycle many times, not just on blockchain, but on other technologies. The problem is the stuff you read for the most part is not all that helpful in understanding how blockchain can add value, right? And that's really what the core thing is. So hopefully if you're on a team and you're working on whatever problem space you're working in, you're getting a great understanding of where blockchain adds value. And I have to, in a sense, say the bulk of what I read by what I call experts doesn't do that well at all. And so what happens is to find the right people, the real goal would probably start with not being a blockchain expert, unless I say you're one of those really narrow people that's going to be building a consensus algorithm that's better than Raft or something. The real goal would be to say, I'm in a problem space, probably I have background there, and I can add value, whether it be at Accenture, Consensus, or somebody else. I understand that. I bring an interest, I bring some skill sets to the team, but the key to it is not just blockchain, but every place I work, in a sense, each thing that I'm working on, my first skill set is, am I asking the right questions? And what I see is many people don't. And that's, if I had to say where the gap is, it's between those who can figure out the right questions to ask, and those who, in a sense, are working on a problem without asking the right questions. And unfortunately, when I see solutions go bad, it's usually because the right questions weren't asked at the right time. In effect, there's a tremendous opportunity. So that's one key thing on the road. The only other thing I'll say is that there is what I call structured education all over the place, right? So Linux Foundation has it, everybody, Harvard, MIT, wherever you want to go, your community college, they all have everybody has a course on blockchain now, or many courses on blockchain.
Yep.
The one thing I'll say is, as a guy who's leading teams on blockchain, I, for the most part, don't have time for you to go through those courses. What I really want, if you're doing it on your own, great background, go take the courses. But if I'm trying to get somebody up to speed on my team, and I look at Josh and say, hey, Josh is the right guy. He's a good guy to work with. I need him. He knows zero about blockchain. What am I going to do? I'm literally going to grab Josh, and I'm going to do what I call fill knowledge holes. So I'm going to understand first where Josh is coming from. What does Josh know? What is Josh strong about? I know where I need to get with Josh. And I'm literally going to define where the knowledge holes are and just fill those directly. And from my experience, that's about 4 times faster than letting Josh go through what I call standard education. And so it gets me what I call competent, useful engineers, developers, whatever, designers onto projects quicker than any other path I can figure out at this point.
Okay, yeah, no, I get that whole filling the knowledge gap, Jim, and getting people on board quickly. And so the next thing I want to really kind of focus on here is from the questions that we have. And so Grace, Consensus hires for a lot of different roles, and I think you may even have open recs yourself. So how does Consensus and yourself go about, defining these new roles and opportunities in the blockchain space, so that, as Jim talked about earlier, you have a very nice job description that actually meets the needs of Consensus?
I mean, so probably like all organizations, we do go through kind of an internal process of assessing what are our needs, where are our growth areas, where do we want to invest more in, and say, and where is there a gap in the space or a gap in our products, and we want to double down on that and create a new team or create support functions around it. I will say, so there's no special sauce is what I would say on the Consensus side. It is just looking at the business needs and how we kind of want to grow and where our priorities are, and what the different products want to achieve. We have quite a few products, as I mentioned at the beginning. So basically, we're a product development firm, and how we think about, how are we going to meet our customers' requirements? How are we going to meet our users' requirements? Because we're working on lots of open source software. That's how we kind of assess the need. And then kind of go through a process of validating that. What I think is, relevant for this group maybe to highlight is that when we're thinking about roles and what you're thinking about for what's a good fit, or you're looking at the job description, is this for me? I would say that Consensus in particular, we have, I tried to count earlier, but I actually lost count. I think it's over 100 open job recs at this moment. So at this point, we're hiring fast. So and it's not, we have full steam ahead. What's great about you all being interested now is that the blockchain space, the crypto space is growing exponentially, and we need to hire people very quickly. So that's probably the only thing that would be maybe a little different than others, is that we have so many open roles and the space is growing so much, and our products need so many people, which is a great problem to have, that it's definitely, trying to think of how do we grow and scale very quickly because of our business needs and our customer requirements. So that's kind of how we think about it. I mean, 1 is just product needs. 2, we need to grow fast.
Yeah, no, and I know that. Maybe you can even talk a little bit about the scale that Consensus is at today, based on, having 100 job recs open right now. talk about the size of Consensus and a little bit more about the team that's involved here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I probably should have shared that at the beginning. So currently Consensus is a software company. As I mentioned, we build about a handful of products as well as have a research and development arm. We're about 500 globally. We are a remote first company. So if you want to continue working from home, like we have all been for the last year, Consensus is a great option because we did it before it was cool. But so when you're thinking about kind of with Consensus and how we're and our kind of our offerings, we are founded by Joe Lubin, who is one of the founders of Ethereum, and our mission is basically growing Ethereum and making products that help users with Ethereum. So when you're thinking about how we should, when you're thinking about if Consensus is right for you, or I want to learn more, if you want to be at a software development company that is basically building some of the leading products in Ethereum and blockchain, that's how you're probably coming to the right place. I think someone had a message in the chat that, oh yeah, the remote first, yeah.
Yeah, the
it is
remote
nice.
first
Yeah,
aspect. Yep.
So it is 500 people globally. We do hire all around the world. So it's not just even, certain geographies that have to be remote. It is, I think, just about every continent, maybe not Antarctica. But anyway, so when we're thinking about that, like, and you're looking for roles and the company of Consensus, remote, working on Ethereum and product development, we're not necessarily, be like, if you're interested in a consulting gig, more of those you'd find with Josh at Accenture, but we're definitely focused on product development. Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks, Grace. Awesome. Josh, so let's talk a little bit about Accenture and finding roles and opportunities and
the consulting gig. That's what it is.
Yes. And mention the scale and scope of Accenture's operation,
Sure.
so that the group gets a feel for that as well.
Sure. First on the scale and scope and just kind of how Accenture treats our group. So the multi-party systems and blockchain organization sits within our tech innovation practice, where we kind of keep all of our ventures and open innovation, R&D labs, other groups like quantum or robotics, VR, kind of all sit in a similar portfolio to us. So it's really cool just from that aspect, to kind of be not only thinking about how our technology is kind of changing our clients' business, but also how do we interlock with our other, kind of fellow incubating organizations that are kind of on the next wave of being implemented. So that's super, super exciting, and definitely something that I enjoy about where our group sits. I'd say we're probably, in terms of dedicated positions only looking at blockchain full time, we're over 100 at this point, and we have to double headcount roughly in the next year or so, and with plans kind of to grow after. So again, like we are kind of in many other lines of business, blockchain, definitely not unique in the sense that we're looking to onboard a ton of folks and looking for that kind of that right mix of talent. In terms of the kind of makeup of the group, another aspect that I really enjoy about it is it really is kind of a blend of folks coming in with a bit more of a business strategy, folks who are kind of pure tech arcs and engineers, and then a ton of just very kind of entrepreneurial, business leaders or folks who just have a huge passion for the space. So kind of whatever you would resonate with, that's one side of consulting that I really, really enjoy is because we're not as oriented around like a given product, and it's kind of more how do we pull on the right partnerships, assets, vendors, et cetera, to kind of solve different needs that our clients are coming to us with. So a bit of a different angle, but definitely something that's quite dynamic and allows you to see kind of opportunities across the patch at a bit, just at a different pace and different cadence, I would say. In terms of how we're defining the new roles and opportunities, I think what I had mentioned around our offerings previously is a good way to think about it. So if you are looking at one of the spaces in particular across either supply chain, financial services, or digital identity, we have kind of capabilities that sit within each of those offerings, and our teams, many will roll up to those offerings in particular. So that's one way to think about it. The other is, of course, by market unit or geography. So whether it's, you have a passion for, working in a given region and kind of helping clients in a given region, or if you feel that you've got kind of a particular industry or offering lens that you could bring to it, that's how we tend to hire and tend to look for talent. Yeah, and I think if maybe more additional things I would add to it probably bleed into some of the other questions, so I might wait on it a bit, but that's a good way to think about it, yeah, in terms of size, scale, and how we're situated within Accenture.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great, Josh. Good perspective. And Jim, you want to give us your perspective on kind of your operation and what you're looking for as far as talent? And even as far as that goes, Jim, I know you talked about really defining the job description. So maybe you also want to weigh in a little bit on that right here.
Yeah, so the job description. All right, I apologize. I should actually be having a beer right now to relax and calm down. I just read my own company put out a job description that was, I'll call it, I would give it about, I don't know, a D plus. And I'm being generous because it is my company. So I'll be nice to them, D plus. So right now, we're not as big as Consensus or certainly Accenture, either one. They both have bigger on-ramps, which is important to understand that whole process, which is why it's great that they're really here. And I'm thrilled that, in a sense, everybody in the audience gets to understand what I'll call it a different type of an on-ramp is. And you should, it's really great to have both Josh and Grace here and really understand, as they say, not what the job application is, not what the job description is, none of that. Interview stuff is fine. It's really a journey. And you want to know from start to finish what that journey looks like. And in the sense, if you're interested in the company, not just the role, which is really where they're coming from, and I agree with that. You really want to understand the journey and the company. That's a lot to learn about, just outside of saying, hey, what's my job? Data engineer. In my case, I'm working with a smaller company, and we tend to have, obviously, a different type of an on-ramp. And so there's a lot of little small organizations. And what you're usually looking at is probably a shorter need-focused kind of a thing where you're saying, hey, I've got a gap right here. I need to fill the gap. I do have an HR staff that's, or outside consultants who's putting together a job description and so on, to try to help define, in a sense, what the talent is I'm looking for and how to fill the team. And as a manager on my side of the fence, if I'm any good, I'm not looking at saying, okay, I'm interested in candidates to fill what I call, it's like the Titanic, if the ship is going down, there's a hole inside. I need somebody to fix the hole. If I'm going to get somebody temporary, I should be getting a contractor on a temporary basis. If I think the need is permanent and strategic, then I should define that job description. The worst thing I think is if somebody puts out a job description that says contract or perm, and they have no idea what they're trying to write, what they're actually trying to fill. So when you're looking at a perm role, the theory on my end is always that we're trying to get in alignment with, in a sense, who you are and where the company's going. And there's some long-term relationship between the two. And when I'm looking at a contract role, it's like it could be a long-term contract, but I'm not committing to anything. I'm saying I have an immediate need right here, and I need usually somebody with skill sets to come in and fill that. And so to me, those are the two big differences for what it's worth. The only other thing, and I will take an extra minute to talk about bad job descriptions quickly, but a really bad job description is one, the best you get out of many of these job descriptions is, here's my long list that was vetted by HR of all the things I think you should have for this role as skill sets. So if they're good, they tell you what the role in theory is going to do. They point you to places about the company so you will understand what is Consensus like, what's Accenture, what kind of things do they do. And that gives you a broader business context. But then they should point you to not only upload what your role is, what part of a team are you going to be on. Of course, they give you, ideally, your responsibilities. The problem is when you read those, if they're good, they're at least going to say, these are base requirements and here's preferred things to have. They'll at least give you that split.
Sure.
The problem is you look at that and you go, oh, look, by the time somebody got finished producing this job description, they listed 37 different technologies in the base requirements, right? So is that reality? Hell no. So who committed that error? Who was the one that let that job description get out the door that way? If there are some critical things you got to have, it should say must have, and it should list the 2 or 3 or whatever the must haves are, just to get you to even be screened properly, right? After that, it's what I call the nice to haves, or then eventually you get to the preferreds. Somebody has to do more thinking about that. You should be able to read a job description as somebody who wants to apply for a role, and it should be super clear, not only what the business context is, how my team operates, our operating model, you get a flavor of that, but you should have that, here's the core things, don't even apply if you don't have these 3 things. By the way, whatever, NoSQL skills are my highest priority. Something like that really sets you right. And you know that if NoSQL is not your strength, then don't even waste your time sending in the app, because we're not even gonna look at it. But if you have some NoSQL background and you meet the other 2 partially that are the must-haves, then yeah, you're probably a candidate. Go ahead and submit. The fact that you don't have experience, migrating ICS to DB2 on a mainframe or something, and the fact that I failed to indicate that that's a much lower requirement, and I'm willing to look at lots of people that don't have that requirement at all, none of that is usually well communicated in the job description. So fundamentally, it leaves the people who want to apply for a job, I'll put very much in the dark. And one of the gaps I find a lot of times is hiring managers don't really either, in some cases, know the technology they're hiring for, which is why they have a challenge with a job description, or they didn't write the job description. So I won't name names, but I've worked for big companies where somebody else writes a job description, not the hiring manager. And I couldn't say enough how, in a sense, bad a process that is, right? So ideally, you want the hiring manager involved. You can lean on somebody who's a professional like Grace and say, help me out, give me some expertise. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be on my team, then I certainly should have been involved in writing that job description, should have been involved in weighting the requirements and so on. So hopefully that gives you some context.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Jim. And I think that really kind of ties into kind of the 3rd bullet point here. So at this point, I'm going to kind of tie in the number 2 and number 3 bullet points together. So Grace, maybe you can talk a little bit about what Jim was referring to is, where you might have a laundry list of the job description. And we even talked about this in the previous panel discussion we had earlier in the series. And then, the resumes, which may have a similar laundry list. So maybe just touch base on that. And then also talk about, if somebody wants to get on board with Consensus and one of these great 100 recs that are open, how do they do that? And additionally, I guess this is for the entire group here, is are there other resources, maybe not directly related to your company, that you think are good avenues for them to pursue to get a job or to investigate what positions are out there? So Grace, I'll start with you.
Those were quite a few questions, so I'll
Yeah,
try
quite
to
a few
keep up
questions.
with.
So try
So I
and
think
just bundle them up as best you can. How's that, Grace?
All right. So the first question you had was around just the JD itself and qualification. So
Yep.
at least for Consensus, no is the short answer, that you do not need to meet all of the qualifications. That's also a very, for, I don't know if there's diverse candidates out there, but that's actually something that's a big issue in hiring, is that, some certain diverse candidates usually don't apply to jobs if they don't meet all of the qualifications. And so Consensus, we really try to have our JDs include preferred and I think it's preferred and required skills. So preferred are nice to have. We will not be, if you don't have them, it won't impact, whether we're going to decide to interview with you or not. And then required gives you a sense of kind of what we're looking for in the role and our must-haves. Your second question was around how I evaluate the resumes I see, or what's a good resume? Say that again.
Yeah, it was basically just, I think you covered it perfectly already, Grace. It's just about, if a person's submitting the resume, does they have to meet all the criteria? And you said,
Yes.
like good to have, absolutely required. And I like the aspect of saying, we want to have a much more diverse workforce. So we're going to, take that into consideration.
Yep.
And then also just as far as places where they can onboard into finding these jobs that are available. So
Yeah.
whether that's consensus.net or other resources you think might be helpful.
For sure. Yes. So, yes, our website, I'll drop the link in the chat here. But this is an open call out for anyone on the call. If they see any role they're interested in at Consensus, they can send me an email or a LinkedIn message, and I'll get back to you and put you into the referral system, and answer any questions you have as well. But so that's the link there for at least Consensus and what roles we have open. You'll see it spans from finance to sales to marketing to front-end engineer, back-end engineer, DevOps, you name it, it's there. But so when you're thinking about though other resources and what you should be looking for, so one, this is a great start. I'm really impressed you all are here on your Thursday night or wherever you're based. So that's definitely a great resource. Hyperledger has so many great resources, including the Hyperledger job board, which does have some jobs for the different member companies. I'd also say from my lens, the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance also has similar lenses. And if you're thinking of like companies that are working in blockchain, if you just look at the member list for Hyperledger as well as the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and you go on their websites, you'll say, oh, like I didn't even know that, I don't know, Hitachi was working on a blockchain, but then you see them in the member list, and then you can say, okay, like let me go follow up and look at their open roles and if they have any there. But those are good kind of places to see what they're working on. I'd also say that if you're thinking of kind of, other kind of blockchain resources are of course just the news, any of those kind of websites. So Ledger Insights, Cointelegraph, and CoinDesk are my favorites. Take it or, I'm sure others would disagree. But, seeing those names in the headlines and being like, what do they do? I'm interested in what they're doing, and following up and looking into them and their jobs is definitely a great start.
Yeah, that's awesome, Grace. I think super advice. And I also put a link in for the Hyperledger job board that you mentioned, and that's a great way to go to see what other Hyperledger members may have as well. Okay, Josh, maybe talk a little bit about, the qualifications and how Accenture views that, and then maybe also go into, how they would be able to get recruited by Accenture or other avenues you think would be helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, no. So I also just pinged in the link, and let me know if folks have any issues. It's like the hyperlink to our open roles within Accenture, kind of filtered already by blockchain roles. So as you can see, we have a ton that's out there, and it's a little tough for me then to say, what specifically we're looking for, because I think if you click on that link and just kind of scroll through some of the open opportunities, you can see that not only does it really range from, folks just kind of starting out in their career to, managers, senior managers, et cetera, but it also varies as well, kind of like I was mentioning earlier, between maybe functional industry specific consultants, whose primary role will be kind of interfacing with clients and helping to drive work, for a given company in a given use case, all the way to offering development. So, how do we kind of be better at Accenture? How do we form strategic partnerships? How do we go to market? Thinking about things like that. And then again, tech specific roles and things like that. So it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag depending on what you're really looking for. To get to more of the kind of like soft skills, competencies, things that I would recommend. Again, there are fantastic folks who work in our HR organization that can answer this much better than I, but I would kind of just guide you to remove blockchain from the, consideration. A lot of those kind of, cliche, new job isms are going to hold true, right? How are you presenting yourself as a candidate? Why do you care about the company? Is it the unique role that Accenture or Consensus or any given kind of company that you're applying to have a point of view on what role they play within the ecosystem, because every company is kind of looking at it a bit differently. And just have that kind of as an entry point or a point of view that you have as you're bringing that to job applications.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's given them a good perspective on, the general interview process and, making sure that you understand the culture of the company and then how the blockchain ecosystem fits in. And, it's going to be a core component of Consensus, Whereas in Accenture as a consulting company, it's going to be a core focus of a team or one of the infrastructure plays within the organization. Okay, perfect. And then, so Jim, why don't you, I think you already kind of weighed in about, you're glad to train up people on the qualification side. Are there any, real core qualifications? And then how would they interface with your company if they wanted to look at getting into a new position that you just talked about?
Yeah, good question. So from my perspective, let's put it this way. I've had contract roles in the past. I don't have a contract role open now. When I've had a contract role to fill, whether it was on Fabric or something else, blockchain or not, I was always asking, let's look immediately at the portfolio of your work, right? So I really was concerned because I've got an immediate hole in my case I want to fill, and I'm just trying to align, John, are your skills a good match today with what I've got to do over here? And the way I'm going to look at it is I'll look at you and say, oh, okay, so I needed these 6 things. Well, here's John. And John, talking to him, seems like the right kind of person. I've had a few other people on my team that we just talked to him briefly, just to get a feel of how you are, as I'll call it, how you would fit with the team as personality, if you will, right? And if you, in a sense, if I get feedback from multiple people saying, yeah, John's easy to work with, this is the way he likes to operate, and that's consistent with what you're telling me, and I'll say, okay, now I understand how John likes to operate, and I think that method of operation is going to work with my team. So that's check 1. Then I'm going to come over and look at the skill sets and say, hey, I've got, and I do this all the time, I've got these 6 holes that maybe Bobby left, and these are the 6 things she did. And now I need those 6 filled right away. So what I'm doing is saying, okay, John, show me what your work is. I don't want to put you through, I'll put a skills test or any of that mess. I'm going to say, John, I'm looking at somebody that does React Native, or I'm looking at somebody that does Feathers with Node.js, or I'm looking at somebody that does, Grails or Groovy or whatever it is that I'm looking for technically. And I'll say, that's what it is. It's these 6 skills that I'm trying to replace, and now that Bobby left. So give me your best work. Let's talk about those things. Let's talk, and I want you to show me what you've done. Not, I don't want to waste your time trying to explain what my project is. I'm going to go look at your stuff, and you're going to explain your stuff to me. And that is, without a doubt, the fastest way I can get a read on how you think about things and how you solve problems. And when you and I go through that quick dialogue, what I'm going to find out is, oh, John's a great guy to work with, sharp guy, thinks well, asks the right questions. Really strong in these 4 areas, and literally is a complete 0 in these other 2 areas that I really have to fill, right? And I will tell you 100% of the time, I define myself as, I'll call it a coach and the utility player on a baseball team. So now I say, gee, John's really good at these things, and he doesn't know anything about 5 and 6. Okay, so that's now a hole. What am I going to do? Am I going to pass on John? No, if John's really a strong teammate and he really does those 4 well, I'm going to cover 5 and 6, and I'm going to pull you onto the team because you're going to fill that gap immediately because you know the other 4 things, and I'm confident of that. So I'll make a fairly quick hiring decision based on that. But the key thing was I needed 6 items. I only got 4, but I was really confident from what you told me that you covered those 4 really well. So it's now just up to me to reshuffle and cover the other 2. And that has worked out well from a contractor's perspective. When I'm looking for full-time people, I hate, I'll put Jim's stupid analogy. I always say it's the difference between dating and marriage, right? So you can go on lots of dates, but when you want to get married, you want it to be a longer term reason on both ends. So in theory, as Josh was saying, you want to have alignment with, gee, I think I like what the company's doing. I think I like the value they deliver to their customers. I think I could like to be part of that. I like, in a sense, the people I've met from Accenture. I think I like their culture, their work culture, and so on. If I check off all of those, if they look at me and say, hey, Jim, you're a good guy to work with, and you cover all of these things, and we think you're a good teammate too, you bring something to the table right now, hopefully, but more importantly, we think you're going to be you have the potential to be a significant value add early on by bringing these things in. So reversing my own example, maybe they wanted 6 specific skill sets and I only brought 4, but I brought good experience with me. the hiring manager on the other side is going to say, well, at least there looks to be a very long-term alignment. At least he looks like he's going to be a good teammate for us. He fits the work culture, and he certainly has those 4 skills based on his experience. Yeah, he's the right guy to bring on board. And yes, they'll maybe have to shuffle 1 or 2 things around to cover the gaps that I don't cover that they have in the short term. But the key thing is that longer term culture is an investment on both ends. And I always say, when I used to hire people as a CIO, I'd hire people and I'd say, look, right now, it looks like a good fit from my perspective. Take a look on your end, look at what we're offering, look at the company, and hopefully, if we both done our due diligence, we should be able to say to each other, yeah, I'd be really comfortable joining this organization for the next 3 years, and I'd be comfortable having you on the team for 3 years. After that, there are no guarantees in life. So the way I look at it is, Lord knows I'm divorced, so I can say that with experience. But the deal is, there are no guarantees in life. And I'll tell you, the first CIO role I had, it was kind of cool. I used to tell people when I hired them, think of us as like a university. You go through a university at a bare minimum, spend 4 years there, you get a degree and you graduate, right? If you're coming in here and you're a fit for us, you should know well enough up front that we're a good fit for a couple of years. I should know well enough that the value you bring in with you is going to be worth it for several years. What's going to happen is, as we work on your career over time, you may grow in different directions and have different abilities and say, I'm ready for a challenge. And if we're partners together in your career, if we do it right, you'll come back and say, hey, you know what? I want to do something different. I want to manage this or that. We'll honestly look at ourselves and say, well, do we have that opportunity? Is it here now? Is it something that's going to be available shortly? If it isn't, think of me as being your guidance counselor as a graduate. I'm happy to help you graduate from my organization to something that is a better fit for you. And honestly, that has worked out well. So I'll tell you, the first major CIO role I had out of this one area that I managed, I had 22 people work for me. One didn't want to go on, was retiring. Another one didn't want to change her job at all. She just wanted to stay. It was a low-key, low-pressure job, wanted to keep that. But the other 20 out of the 22 eventually became managers or IT directors or CIOs somewhere else. They all sort of graduated. And that graduation concept on the career side, it wasn't just about evaluating you every 6 months and say, hey, John's doing a good job. It was, no, let's look forward and see again, where are we? What do we have in front of us? What are you interested in? And what is that alignment? And literally, I used to spend a considerable amount of time helping people graduate from my own program, if that makes sense. And so I think, responsible
makes perfect sense.
companies would do the same thing, I'll say.
Yeah, okay, great. That's an excellent perspective, Jim. So I think we've covered most of these questions here already. I'm going to focus on one more question for the panel, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bobby. And I think this last question is going to be very relevant to Bobby's discussion, and that is, how can the candidates who are joining us build their skills for blockchain roles? And I know we've talked about how, blockchain expertise can cover many facets, but maybe each one of you can kind of just give a little synopsis as to how the candidates could build their skill set. So Grace, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. Being here is a very good start. So everyone should give themselves credit. No, but I think, there are many different ways, as simple as reading, as listening to podcasts, it's kind of whatever is your learning mechanism of choice is, there are so many resources depending on, what you prefer. If you want to listen to a podcast, if you want to read an article, if you want to join a meetup, if you want to go to a conference, like all of those things are open and all great opportunities. I will say that, and I've seen, I have met people almost through every path, that has, gone on to find a blockchain job. So there's no one size fits all. One thing I will say about, particularly within Hyperledger, and what, if you're interested, and this is my shameless plug for Hyperledger Besu and our project and our Ethereum client, is that we have hired contributors who have, gone on to the repo and submitted some pull requests and identify an issue that they want to work on, and they're able to demonstrate their skills that way. And then, they reach out and, on Rocket Chat or whatever and say, hey, I'm actually interested in a role with you all, and is there something open? And we've hired people through that mechanism. So open source is a great avenue in addition to kind of all of those, learn through your own adventure paths that you could choose as well. But that's definitely my shameless plug for contributing to projects is a really, really great way to do it.
Yeah. And Grace, I agree with you 1,000%. And I would say that definitely if anyone on this call wants to engage with Hyperledger, either as a maintainer or a contributor, I agree with Grace 100% that I think that would really be a way to kickstart your involvement with the blockchain space. So thanks for that, Grace. That's perfect. Okay, Josh, your thoughts around preparing for entering the space, building their skills?
Yeah, I mean, my perspective is that it is much better and maybe even easier than it's ever been to kind of just directly get into the space. I think my answer a few years ago would have been more the typical, attend conferences, personal networking. Like that would be truly kind of the easiest way, just because there was not that much that was being directly posted, and it was especially at consultancies and other companies, it was very much of a who already works at this company that we can kind of bring in and kind of already has certain inroads. And so you'll hear, I think, a lot of folks as they're talking about their own journey into their current blockchain role, right? It always comes from it wasn't, I was born living and breathing blockchain and I'm, now killing this role. It's always, I came in, I had some kind of functional slice and was brought in because of just personal interest or, luck of the draw. So I think the good news is that, as Grace has mentioned, and hopefully if you're able to access the bit.ly that I posted as well, like you can see that a great way is just to directly now look at the tons and tons of open roles that are being posted, try to figure out, do you want to sit in more of a functional or a technical role? Is consulting something that's interesting to you, or would you rather be at a company that has, a kind of core product and that provides a bit of grounding and things like that as well. So again, I think a lot of it is just going to depend on your personal preference. Things that I would highlight is just, again, and I'll keep hitting on this point because this is where I've seen applicants do a great job at differentiating themselves, is figure out kind of what your personal experiences have been, what's interested you in the space to begin with. Of all emerging technologies, why is this kind of where you're at right now, on a Thursday evening, and, something's drawn you to it and something's kind of stuck out to you. And so kind of highlighting that and, figuring out what kind of new approach and new angle that you want to take to it. I can't really stress enough how important it is to kind of, be aware of that as you're going into some of these conversations, because a lot of the time, the blockchain knowledge is going to be something that, regardless of how kind of up to date you are, you're going to have to do some learning, regardless of any organization that you join. Podcasts, reading kind of industry news, things like that is a great way, but each company is going to kind of have their own internal lingo and way that they think about things. So really just kind of having a good handle on either the technical or the functional skills that you bring to the table outside of that is just something that I would definitely highlight.
Perfect. Man, that's great insight, Josh. Jim, what are your thoughts around building your skills? And then we'll turn it over to Bobby.
A couple of things. Great. Good question. From my perspective, and I won't pretend that everybody learns the same way I learn, but it's funny. When I wanted to learn blockchain, so I had this weird thing. I didn't select blockchain. I was selected for blockchain by somebody else who said, hey, you're doing this work as a product manager. You have a very strong technical background. We need somebody who's going to go look at these new technologies. And I already knew device integration, having built device networks years before the internet existed. So I understood that. So it wasn't a device issue. And I had built some simple machine learning programs, which weren't even that important at the time for this company. But they said, oh, we think blockchain is going to be really big without any understanding of it. And they said, we want somebody to focus on it. So we kind of like had a secret meeting and elected you. So it's like, okay, so I didn't go running for it. It came after me kind of a thing. What was interesting is I made one right decision. I don't make a lot of right decisions in life, but this one was really right. What I did was I thought about it, and there are all these roles. And, Josh and others have mentioned the idea that, yeah, get involved in an open source project as a contributor, right? So the problem is I did go to the Hyperledger Fabric, and I knew Fabric was the strongest of the platforms that Linux Foundation had by far. It had the most activity. It was going to have the most durability. It was going to get the most engineering. I guess I know a lot about software, and I can read what I call ones that are going to be long-term versus ones that are not going to make it, in a sense. They're not healthy enough, in a sense, as communities. And when you look at open source, you look at communities. When you look at commercial companies, you're getting more branding, which makes it a little more difficult to, in a sense, understand the durability of a platform. So you have to get some sense of how to read that right. But it was easy to figure out that in the Linux Hyperledger project, Fabric was the strongest one by far at the time, had the most, in a sense, demand, not for developers, I wasn't worried about that, but most demand for application use cases, which was great. That was simple. So then I said to myself, okay, where do I want to fit into that framework? And I said, okay, I'm a technical guy, but I'm also a business guy, and I'm a product owner, manager kind of a thing. I said, all right, those are my roles. I can sort of slide in a lot of different places. But I went to a Hyperledger Fabric contributor meeting, and I listened to the contributors specifically talk about what they were working on. And I said, okay, so I know protocols, custom protocols, I built some. Do I know protobuf well enough for gossip? No, I don't. Do I know the internals of Fabric's consensus algorithms well enough? No. So I sort of went down this checklist, listening to these developers talk about the great things they were doing. And I said, hey, you know what? I'm not qualified to be one of those guys at this point. So I backed off and I said, well, where should I start? And of course, you can always go read the doc, and that's always scary because a lot of products have very bad documentation. But in the case of Hyperledger, they had a bigger commitment to docs than almost any. So Hyperledger Fabric had a far stronger commitment to documentation than any other open source project I'd ever been associated with, which is really saying a lot. And
Yep, that's great for Hyperledger.
I worked for IBM. They didn't do so well on doc either sometimes. But when I looked at it, I said to myself, I typically learn best in QA. That's where I come in. So here you guys are building something. Let me be a tester, and I'll come in and I'll learn very much about how this whole thing works by testing it. But when I got to Fabric, I said, you know what? There's a better place to be. QA, I'm testing stuff that's not ready to roll. And I thought about it. I said, you know what? The right place to be is on the documentation team. And it was an open source team. So I made one brilliant move in my life. I said, jump over to the Fabric documentation team. It's okay that you're an idiot. As long as you got a pair of hands, you're willing to read stuff and say, I don't understand it. That's highly qualified to be on a documentation team. And then help them get feedback on how to improve it. So I was an expert at that, saying I don't understand. That was my real strength that I brought to the table, unlike the other guys on the team who actually knew this stuff. And so I had value right away, but at the same time I could learn. And the key to it was, I knew that if you're in the if you volunteer in the documentation team, what's funny about it is all of the parts may not work at different points. So if you're testing it in QA, it doesn't mean that, in a sense, the product is ready or that your test is right or wrong. You have to be at a higher level. Going to the documentation team, you know that all the parts have to come together. This ship is about to get launched for real. And so the quality of what's there, the code, the documentation is a lot better than if you're volunteering to be part of QA or coding. So I jumped over there. Sure enough, it was the right choice. I jumped into what was their initial documentation, their initial examples for Fabric and all that, and was able to, I'll call it, stand up, find gaps in the stuff, make some contributions. But definitely starting in the documentation team as a volunteer was without a doubt the smartest move I made. And it was the fastest growth. They had great input from the architects to the documentation team. And I literally learned Fabric better than if I had taken courses in it, for sure.
Yeah, and that's perfect, Jim. And really what I'm hearing across the group is engage with the communities, engage with events like this. And if you become a core maintainer, or if you're a contributor in any project, you'll definitely get noticed, and it's a great way and a great on-ramp to a profession. So Grace, Josh, Jim, I really want to thank you for being a part of the panel today. And at this point, I'd love to turn it over to Bobby, and she's got a whole great event to go through for us, and I'm turning over to Bobby right now. Thanks.
Thanks. And I just want to give a shout out to Consensus, Hyperledger, and Accenture. I've worked with companies throughout my career, and the inclusivity and the welcoming nature of these companies I have never seen before. They make you feel all are welcome. There's no doubt that no matter where you're coming from, you have an opportunity. And it is so refreshing to see the welcomeness that all those companies, you know, afford to new candidates coming in. So kudos to you guys. Moving along a little bit, we're going to, if this works, talk a little bit about blockchain careers and education. So all these working groups are great. I got my education through the working groups at Hyperledger and the special interest groups at Hyperledger. And again, it's a great way to learn the business end of what's going on, where the use cases are going to fall in. Again, you got to find your way to get into the community. But again, you want something, if you have skills and you want them to transfer over, education is the best way. It's what I do. It's my lane. I stay in it. So we at this endeavor this summer wanted to support that educational piece. So we used a Hyperledger training partner, the Indian Blockchain Institute, and they're offering some courses with some discounts and stuff. And I'm going to let Nareesh talk about that for a little bit. He's going to go over some of the jobs, some of the courses. So Nareesh, if you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. Good evening, everyone. And it was a great panel, Bobby, and a lot of insights. All right. In fact, they talked about the various roles. And it's like any project, any IT project when you implement. So the various roles are required. Developers is there, system administrator is there, or architect or consultant, business analyst, or even tester is there, even project manager, designer. So like any project, in blockchain project also, we need all kind of roles. But there are 5 roles. 4 or 5 roles which are more popular, which are more in demand. And one is a blockchain consultant, blockchain developer, blockchain administrator, and blockchain architect. So we have designed our programs accordingly to meet the market demand. And so this is one program, Certified Blockchain Professional. This program there's no prerequisite for this. So you don't need to have any kind of technical background in the past. If you are from IT or in general from the industry, and you can with this program you can learn the concepts of blockchain, and you can work as a consultant or as a business analyst. Because for any project implementation, understanding the domain and based on that designing solution is very, very important, so that it can be used by the developer and the architect to use that for further implementation. So this particular program is for 30 hours. There are 15 sessions of 2 hours each. And we are starting this program on 21st of August, and it will end somewhere in between September. So this program is for Hyperledger Fabric Developer Program. It's for the developer. For developer, there are 2 programs, Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum. So we have chosen Ethereum Fabric, Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum, these two programs, mainly reason being, as we see, 60–70% of the projects are mainly done in these 2 blockchain framework, and they're more popular in demand. So it covers, you can see, up to 70% of the jobs in this area. And both the programs, it requires programming knowledge. You should have prior experience. You should be a software professional. But it is not necessary that if you're a student, you have learned coding skills, you can do this program. So we go in depth of this while learning blockchain concepts. We do learn how to develop smart contract, how to integrate your application front end with the blockchain. So this program contains capstone project for, so where a case study is assigned. There are various different kind of case study for different industry. And the team they work in groups, and each group can choose one case study, and they work together. And each group, each member group of 3-4 people, each individual in that group plays different kind of role, like analyst role, administrator role, architect role, or testing role. Like that, a group work together on a case study and do a complete end-to-end project as part of this program. So any capstone project is worked like that. Similarly, like this blockchain architect program, and this is our longest program. It's mainly for senior working professionals who has strong technological background and architecture experience. And they get to learn here not only blockchain concepts, they go through all the areas of development, consulting, and as well as administration. So this is a longer program. It covers Ethereum and Hyperledger Fabric both. And in this, the capstone project is on Fabric. And this program again starts in 21st August. It will last till end of November. Yes, this particular program is for administrator, and this is on Hyperledger Fabric. This is it requires a prior experience on. You should be working as a DevOps professional, cloud engineer, or network professional, so that you're the best suited and can learn and do the required job in this. So this program also is going to last almost 3 months, starting from 21st or 22nd of August till end of November. It's for 80 hours. Yeah, so these are the major programs which you're offering, and you can join us. We have early bird discount 10% right now for the first 10 signups. Bobby, what is the link where they can go and sign up for this? So
all the information is on the website, www.bcemploy.com, under learning at the last tab. It's all the courses are listed there and how to sign up for them. So jump right in.
All right.
And we'll put the link in the chat too.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. So that is it from my side. If you have any question, I'm happy to take it up.
Yeah, we're going to have a question and answer session in a few minutes where everybody can ask all the panelists and all the presenters questions. So we're going to get to that in a minute. I just want to finish up with, again, congratulating everybody who showed up for this. That means that you're interested in advancing. And you're interested in advancing in an area that is advancing like no other area has done before. So you are in the right place at the right time. It is definitely, I consider it like the wild, wild west of employment right now, because there is just so much going on. But how do you take advantage of that? It's like huge, and you have to be able to know where you're going. So I'm going to give you some hints and some tips to help you in your job search plan. So again, everybody was talking about the culture of a company. Before you even start to think about where you want to be, you have to learn what the company's about. Like, for instance, if you just come off of a 6-month stay at Greenpeace, you're not going to want to go work for Shell Oil. It's just not going to be a good fit. It's just, you're just not going to like it there. It's just something that, you're not going to like. If you want to be working with diverse people, make sure that the group of people interviewing you are diverse. I mean, that's a great way to hint off what's going on. I mean, if you're feel comfortable with where you're going, all the better for you. I mean, that's what it's all about. You want to be prepared and you want to be comfortable where you're going, because that's the way you're going to stay there, is if you're comfortable. But how do you prepare yourself? There's things you can't learn to be prepared. And I bet you every single one of the panelists will agree with me that if you don't have these basic things, you will not get a job. First thing is you need to be prepared and you need to be punctual. You have to be on time. If you're having a Zoom call, be 5 minutes early. Don't be 2 minutes late. You're there asking for their time. So use it properly. Don't treat it without respect. Be coachable, listen, don't talk a lot, which is a hard thing for me to learn. So you have to be respectful, coachable, you have to be prepared, you have to be on time, you have to be nice, you have to let people talk, you have to be thank you and please and respectful. People want to see that you can act with a certain code of conduct, and energetic. You don't want to get there and act like, oh, it's going to be too hard. You know, you want to say, I can do that, even if you don't think you can. I can take that challenge on, even though you have no idea if you can. Say yes first, figure it out later. It's a good motto. And again, watch your body language. That's very crucial these times. You don't want to, as I'm talking with my hands too much, talk with your hands too much. There's certain, you know, you want to try to be a calm force when you're looking for representing yourself. There's some questions you have to ask before you start this job search. Where do you want to work? Do you want to work remotely? Great place to be if that's the answer. The answer is yes. Do you want to work big companies, small companies? We're going to get into a little of that. And what kind of job do you want? Are you a marketer? Are you an accountant? Are you anything? There are blockchain jobs for all of those fields right now. And organize yourself. This is again where I think that the bang for your buck in this seminar is going to come out. When you look at preparing for a job, if it's a feat and oh, I saw this great job in the paper, but now I have to apply for it. You're not organized. You're not ready. And there's certain steps you can take to get ready. And I'm going to show you what they are. So one of the things is, where do you want to work? Independently? Do you want to just take on odd jobs like Jim were talking about? Hackathons, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Do you want to work at a startup? There's startups in every field in blockchain, in every industry. And if you find the right company and the right mix, there's ways, especially with open source, that you can just jump right in even before you meet the people for the job interview. Large companies, there are Verizon, Accenture is a huge company. There's so many big established companies, and I have a few names and a few links in the presentation to show you what they are. And then you could be like me and cursed with the disease of entrepreneurship, where you think you can come up with a better idea and a better way to do something. So you keep trying. And we'll talk a little bit about how that's going to work out for you in this blockchain world. Saddle up for that one. So independent, there are consulting jobs that you can get. I know I take a lot of those that are limited time periods. You do a certain job, you get paid at the end of it, and then you move on to the next one. Being a technical writer, that's a lot of the way we earn a living. So it's a good way, especially in this industry. A lot of documentation needs to be done now. A lot of programs, like Jim said, needs to be tested. You start testing a program and start writing about it. That's great. You're experienced. Hackathons, if you're good at coding, you can just go to some of these sites. They offer monthly hackathons where you can get on a team and you can make money solving computer coded problems. Gitcoin is one. There's a lot of examples, but that's just the one that when I was making these slides came to my mind. That will give you, they'll post jobs like $200 for someone to redo the style sheet on my website, or, you know, and it's, you just take it on, you do that task and you get paid at the end. So there's a lot of companies like that that don't want to hire someone full-time, but just want certain jobs done. And you can find those too. But then moving on to startups, I don't know if you can see this, but these are startup companies in blockchain that are done by sector. So for instance, if you're looking to, again, I think it was said before that they were, someone was drawn to blockchain. Well, most of us are drawn to blockchain. It's like a vacuum and we're just a piece of dust. I mean, you just go. But again, it's hard to start like, I want to be in blockchain. Okay, well, the first question you should ask yourself is, where are you coming from? Are you coming from supply chain? Are you coming from a media job? Do you, like Jim is a specialist in public sector. Have you worked with governments? Do you like those kinds of solutions? Because there's blockchain companies in all of those. So find out what interests you, what's drawing you to blockchain, and then research the companies that are there. There's this neat thing I get into a little later called Telegram. All of these companies have a Telegram, and you can talk to these people directly just by logging into their Telegram and getting involved that way. So again, there's data analytics, there's companies. So again, whatever you're bringing from your past, there's a spot for you in these new markets. So many startup companies. And I take my hat off to Consensus with their mesh and their spokes and their different avenues to not monopolize that, to take advantage of all of the things that Ethereum offers by giving it a business background and a framework for people to develop on. So now larger companies, that's a tough one to work for. You want to work for a larger company, you're going to have so much vacation. You're going to have to report if they decide to open an office. You have to report when they tell you to report. Some people like that kind of structure. I know my one girlfriend who works for Verizon. She's high up in Verizon, and she spends a lot of time on what she calls talent collaboration conversations with her employees. So she has to do a lot of time trying to mix the right employees with the right needs at her position. So she's constantly moving people around. But in blockchain, Deloitte's hiring, and I'm put these information in here just so that you have the links when we post the slides, not so that you sit here and read all this information. But Deloitte is hiring, MasterCard, Accenture, we've already talked a lot about that, and even like the Bank of America. So large companies are hiring in blockchain sections, and no one has a lot of experience here. So if you're just interested and know a little bit, that's a great place to start. And then again, entrepreneur and personal branding. I'm an entrepreneur, so everything is through my LinkedIn. It is who I am. It is my business card. It is my resume. It is everything. So an entrepreneur, you have to be able to sell yourself in any way you can. And LinkedIn is a great way. So again, your LinkedIn profile should have a clear picture of who you are. It should communicate what your interests are. So I try to fit in everything I'm working on so that if anybody I'm working with sees, oh, the giving chain, I know she's working on that. Let's scroll down and see some more about that. So it's clear what I'm working on and what I'm interested in. Open to opportunities. That's a great LinkedIn button. If you're looking for work, they even have a banner you can put over your face that says I'm open for work. So people know you're looking for a job. And then also your top job. I'm on the Hyperledger with Grace Technical Steering Committee. So that's one of the first things on my LinkedIn profile. So it shows up first. If I wanted it to show up, if I wanted another position to show up, I would just list that first in my LinkedIn profile. And then telling your story. Those pictures that you have up there is your movie of your life for someone who's looking at you. Make it good. I won an award for a social impact project with a great team of people through Hyperledger. And I want people to know that I worked on a project and I was successful. So I'm shameless. I stick it up there. But again, that's how you're going to market yourself in this new arena. I don't suggest, if you're looking for employment, always to do a website on top of your LinkedIn, but entrepreneurs, again, you need a website. And if you have a website, and if you're an entrepreneur in this industry or any industry, you have to ask yourself the entrepreneur question. What are you selling and how are you selling it? Because if you can't answer that, you're not an entrepreneur. So again, you have a website. What does your website say? So for instance, I'm just going to use my website. My website tells what I do. I learn, I create, I teach, and I do it again. That's what I do. You want to talk about it, click that button and you can get to talk to me right away. Then action items. Here is my services. I write courseware. So I have a button for if you want me to write your courseware. I have a happy client, the Linux Foundation. They loved my work. Yay. And then I also do private instruction. So if you want to click on pricing options, you can drag me through another feature I'm going to talk about right into my cart and we can get started on a program. Again, I do consulting work. So I have big buttons for my consulting jobs. I mean, I want people to get in touch with me. So I have to make it easy. Again, barcodes, if I'm selling a class, this is an old class, so it's on sale. You can just scan the barcode and go right to the Teachables app and download my class. You have to make it easy for people. So again, a website, if you are trying to sell yourself as an entrepreneur, websites and personal brandings are so important. And then we get to the tough one, social media. Again, there are so many ways to communicate. I get so confused. There's Slack, there's Discord, there's WhatsApp. It's so hard to figure out who's chatting on what channel. And you really have to keep track of who, like your personas you have out there. I have this one social media app I recommend to anyone who is serious about getting a job, interviewing, whatever. It is Calendly or any of these calendar apps where you put this link. Mine says Calendly / Bobby JN for my name. And I put that in my signature on my email so that if anybody wants to talk to me, they just go right to that app and they can schedule my time. I have it set up for time that I have available for consultations, and anyone can go on there and schedule my time. If you want to ask somebody for an interview, you give them that link. It makes it so easy for them to schedule your time. Again, and then you get the other social medias, the Twitters, the Telegrams, the LinkedIns, the Facebooks, the Instagrams. It's like endless. But you should keep track of the presence you put out there so that you know what's happening with them. Telegram, again, is a great way for a lot of these startup companies have Telegram channels where it's just a chat channel. You can post a picture of something silly, say, what do you guys think? How's coding going? Or, just talk to the people involved in the projects. You can tell if the project is viable if they have an active Telegram room or if they have an active Instagram. Some companies pick different ways to communicate. Some people like Twitter better than the Telegram, whatever, but you have to find how the people that you want the jobs are communicating and go to those places and start communicating. And next is the resume. You still need a resume? I mean, basically it's not the same as what's on LinkedIn, but it's close. So you want to have no spelling errors. This is just obvious stuff. Take your resume right before you send it out, copy it, put it in Word, and see if it comes up with any extra spelling errors. You'll always find one, and it's always a good practice. If you send information with bad contact information, no one's going to be able to contact you. So make sure even on your LinkedIn profile that the email that you put there is an email that still works, and make sure it's not stupid. Don't like superman@gmail.com, just take it down a notch and just make it a little serious. Somebody may not want to hire bakery boy or whatever. Again, outdated and relevant information. I can give you jobs that I had. I don't even want to tell you what decade. Nobody cares. They're so old that the functionality of the computer I worked on, I don't even think exists today. So it's not important. Again, try to measure your results, not the steps you took to get there. And again, this is one thing that I always do. Grace was talking about the culture of consensus. If I was going for a job for consensus, I would go to their homepage of their website. I would read about what they say they are, and then I would start incorporating those words in my description of myself. That's a great way to get people to know that you're serious about their culture as well. Don't constantly, as I'm sitting here saying every 5 seconds, don't use repetitive words. Don't constantly say you're awesome, 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 awesome. Try to look up some different words, get it a little stretched out. And don't use a format design that's going to confuse people. Simple, better, white, black lines, nice and easy to read. And there's two kinds of resumes now. There's the standard resume, which usually lists jobs experience. And there's the resume for people like me, who it's more of a functional resume. I have gaps in my work time. I've done jobs. I don't want to even talk about the things I've tried to experiment with that didn't work as an entrepreneur. So I like to put my skills and my experience and my expertise rather than list the jobs in chronological order. So there's two types of resumes. And again, Microsoft Office or any template company can give you great ways to get started. So that's, again, you don't really need to worry about if you have gaps in your resume. There's different types of resumes that will cover that up. And then again, the next one is the interview. I actually was late for one of my interviews. It was actually, I'm shameless to say, it was with Gemini, a huge blockchain company. And I was 2 minutes late because I couldn't get on the Zoom room. I did not get a call back from that interview. I knew I wasn't going to get a call back because the interview didn't go well, because when you show up late, it doesn't. So a few things to know if your interview is going well is the length of the interview. That interview lasted 5 minutes. They were not interested in me because I couldn't tell time. So basically a longer interview, lots of questions, lots of interest in you is a really good sign. Also, the tone, you got to be friendly, you got to be professional, and you can't go in with an attitude of any kind. You're asking them for something, not the other way around, and be as polite as possible. A good sign is if they discuss next steps, like how are you going to jump into this position, or asking you to look at what would happen next in your life. And if they introduce you to the teammates, or if they talk about transitional things, that's probably a good sign as well. So the interview, you know, you can tell how well the interview goes by just the way, the tone of the event. And here's the tip that I like. Now, this is another software program. It's a personal wiki page, costs me $10 a month. And I have access to this page no matter what computer I'm at, no matter where I am and what I'm doing. For what I'm going to talk about now, getting organized in your job search, Microsoft or if you're running Microsoft Windows, you can do the same organization with Windows, just with the file folders, but you should get organized like this. So if you're looking for a job, you need to have, again, in the beginning, I said, if you're looking at a job and you see, oh, this is a great job for me, but the work for applying for it seems overwhelming for you, you're not organized. I can get to, if I see a job that I like, I can pop my resume in. I can get to, I mean, my LinkedIn profile. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. I want to see if this works. My personal wiki page. I'm not sure if this is going to work out so well. See how my computer program works. So here's my personal wiki page. What I would do if I started looking for a job. So I start on August 5th. I submitted a cover letter to company X on this day, and then I will keep track of what happens with that. I will also keep cover letters stored so that when I have to write a cover letter, it's not an overwhelming task. Oh my God, I got to write a cover letter. I have 7 cover letters stored that I can just pop my name in and off to the races. I have the cover letters that I sent out recently for jobs. They're all here stored on this wiki page, or you can store them in a Windows folder. But keep them and keep them organized so that it's not such a hard thing to get a cover letter out there. It takes you 2 seconds. A lot of job resumes or a lot of job applications now are completely, this isn't going to work for me, are completely online, meaning that you don't have the ability to send it out in a format or attach your resume. They want you to answer in certain dialog boxes. So if you have, I don't know why this isn't working back. So if you have your bio or your CVs or the information about you, your references, that's another good one. I'm going to get off the call today. I'm going to ask John Carpenter to write me a letter of reference just to keep it stored in my references over here so that, again, applying for a job isn't so hard. You have the references, you have a cover letter, you have your resume. And a tip I always put out there is edit your resume the day you send it out, because just pretend you looked at it, even if you're not changing anything for that day. Make it look like you took the effort to look at it before you sent it out that day. I know I look at that when I see people's resumes. So when did they edit this? And information like that. And then keep your resources. If you're applying for jobs, write the dates, write who you applied to, what you thought of the job. I really want this one, but I don't know how to go about it. Seeing it in writing, you can say, that job's no good. That job, I like that job. Maybe I will go on their website or their Telegram and start talking to the people there and seeing what's open. As you heard from the big companies, there's a lot of openings. And again, this to me is priceless if you want to seriously look for a job. Get yourself organized before you even open the job listings on LinkedIn, or LinkedIn's a great source for job listings. BC Employee is a great job for blockchain employee. We try to keep the homepage full of great jobs for everybody. And we do give coaching on this too. So there's resources available for you to get out there and get organized. Because again, you got to sell yourself for this job. Nobody's going to sell you for you. You have to do it yourself. So I'm just going to make an announcement and then we're going to open it up to questions. So let's see. Okay, so our next event is on the 24th of August, and that is going to be a job fair where we're going to have the companies that you see, hopefully all of them will be able to make it, have a presence there. They're going to talk about the jobs that they're looking for, and then we're going to do breakout tables where you'll be able to sit down with your credentials or with your information and say, let's talk, let's, see what's going on, and you can choose where you want to go or which one you want to go to. So I do also have an announcement on a meetup tomorrow, the Giving Chain. That's right there. You can just Google thegivingchain.org for information. And now it's the fun part, questions and answers for us. So I know we ran through a lot of stuff quick, and we have like 20 minutes left on the Zoom call. If anybody has questions, now's the time to ask them.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll ask Bobby is just around recognition as well. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the government blockchain recognition that you got and how people could leverage that in getting a job as well.
Yeah, the government blockchain and associations like that. Again, I got my start with Hyperledger. So I'm an educator. I've been teaching computer software programs for my whole life. And as soon as I got it, again, I was drawn like a vacuum cleaner. As soon as I heard blockchain and started studying it, I was completely hooked. I knew I wasn't going to teach, anything ever again. And for me, education is what you pay. It's what you save your money for. It's what you spend your money on. So when I went to Hyperledger and I joined the working groups, Jim's working group, which was the public sector working group, where they talked about public sector problems, and you start to get involved in the conversations. And through that, I mean, this is a long-winded way to get to opportunities, but through that association with public sector, they had a group come from the Netherlands to talk about the Dutch blockchain coalition. And they invited everybody at the working group to go into New York City and come to their consulate and hear their presentation. And I did. It was fabulous. I had a great afternoon. I learned all about the 3 pillars of the community over there that is dedicated to blockchain. And through that, I met the people at the Big Apps Blockchain Challenge. And at the same time, we were working on I don't know if anybody's on the call from the Meetups from 2019. We did a project in blockchain. We tracked donations on a supply chain blockchain from farmers to food banks. And that project, when I heard about, again, through the Dutch consulate, the Big Apps Blockchain Challenge, I applied our project as an honorable mention because it didn't really fit the categories, but it was an interesting social impact project. And they gave us recognition. And through that, we heard about the Government Blockchain Association, and I'm involved in their education and developing some of their curriculum. So through that, they had an awards program, which, what's the date? It's the 12th, where you could apply a proof of concept project. And it didn't have to be a working blockchain project, just a proof of concept project to this competition. And there were 4 categories: leadership, social impact, awareness, and I think the other one was government. But we won for social impact, the project that we had done with the Meetups in Princeton. And they let us go. I know Rhonda's on the call. She was my wingman that day. We went down there to the DC, to the Capitol, and our project got recognized and got exposure on a stage in the Capitol. And now, I mean, that was the pinnacle of my career. I'm sure, I mean, I can't say anything that could top that as far as I'm concerned. And now we're going back down, Ron and I, and we're going to give the award to the winner this year. And why I was saying what the date is that they are still accepting submissions for that competition. So any proof of concept project, it's to the 15th of the month. Go to the Government Blockchain Association, gbaglobal.org, and you'll see the competition is not only for a project, but if you're an artist, you can, up until the 15th, put in an artwork that describes what you want to see blockchain accomplish in your lifetime. And it will get global recognition and they're going to vote for the winning art show on a blockchain. They're using a voting app that their voting working group built, and they're going to test it by voting for the winning art submission. So you can still get your art submissions in, you can still get your project submissions in again. And this is just, all of that opened up for me by just going to a working group call. And you never know where it's going to take you. So that was a very long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that was perfect, Bobby. And another thing I'll just say is you mentioned Gitcoin, and Kevin Owaki is the founder of Gitcoin, and they've really done a great job of setting up an ecosystem for people doing gig work. And they also have a lot of competitions where they give out prizes as well. So I would encourage anyone who really wants to kind of engage in the gig economy to go out and check out Kevin's work and that Gitcoin link that you shared. Okay, what other questions do we have for Bobby around, exceptional advice there, Bobby? And I really liked your whole description about the personal wiki page. That was something that I thought was phenomenal as far as an innovation. And it's something that, based on seeing yours, I definitely want to adopt myself, because that's a great way really to have everything right at your fingertip.
I find it really useful when you're out and you have an article or you have some information that you really want to keep. You can just log on to your wiki page wherever you are and just paste it right in. You can do it from your phone. You can do it. So it's really convenient having like a database follow you around.
Yeah, and I know many times I've been trying to put my finger on something like that, and it's just, having to sort through a drive or a folder to find the exact thing, whereas that thing's right there, and you just, every time you need something, pull it up and it's ready to go. All right, how about Mike? Do you have any questions you'd like to ask Bobby about the recruitment process or advice she's given about getting ready?
Were you asking me, Mike?
Yes, you, Mike, of course.
That's all right. No, I go by Michael, so that's okay.
Okay, I know. I think we've had this discussion where I think it goes back to kindergarten, doesn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so from now on, Michael it is. So Michael, weigh in and let Bobby know your thoughts around, all the great advice she covered here. And if you have any follow-on questions.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Bobby. You did a really good job going through a lot of those structural components for looking for jobs. The other one that I was thinking about as well is, besides some of the organizations, you did forget to mention logging on to meetings like this, go out and just do a search to see, hey, is there anyone talking about blockchain, DLT, all those synonyms that are involved. Even though I'm not a programmer, I may not be a marketer, listen in and see if there's something you can contribute or take out of it. Because there's other groups that are always looking for people to talk about things in the blockchain ecosystem. And I've done that myself, where I volunteer and say, yeah, I don't know anything about left-handed smart contracts, but, give me 3 weeks, I'll go do my research and I'll present it to you. It's, forcing yourself to learn that new thing, practice it and present it, makes you feel better, gets exposure, and soon enough, you're an expert.
And I do have to say one thing, like not even with COVID withstanding, but a lot of these jobs were remote anyway. And I feel that kind of evens the playing field for a lot of people. Like for me, being able to study and being able to join working groups from my home was amazing. Like I didn't have to drive into the city an hour and a half on the train or get in there. I can join these groups on my computer. And I think, that one of the things that when this whole pandemic is over, I think that we'll keep is the convenience of meetings like this. I mean, I think they're always going to be hybrid from now on because people are just going to want to go and just can't get there. So I think it's not a benefit, but I think a lot of the companies, even before COVID, these companies in this area, somebody asked me once, what are the, being an elderly woman, what were your barriers to getting into blockchain? And I had to be honest, and I said, none. I said, if I wanted to do the work, I could go wherever I wanted to go and be wherever I wanted to be. And no one told me I couldn't. As long as I was, you know, if I committed to doing something, I did it. And that's all they kept. That's, again, it's your skill set and what you're willing to do for it.
Yeah, and you've definitely done a great job. I shared a link in here of the Learning Materials Development Working Group. And I cannot tell you how much great work that Bobby has contributed to Hyperledger and the Learning Materials Working Group, and is really the leading force behind that group. And I appreciate all your hard work and effort, Bobby, for sure.
Shameless plug, if you want to learn about the Hyperledger community, join us every other Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern time.
And then the other thing I shared in there was just, you know, Hyperledger is a very open and welcoming community, as Bobby correctly assessed. And I also shared a link in there that just shows, you know, here's a way for you to participate and join a group. And there's a vast array of groups that you could join and really just find something that resonates with you. And it's a great way to onboard, and the community is always very welcoming.
Hey, thanks to you guys for setting this up. I just had a really quick question over certifications. I just kind of want to know like the views on like how does someone have a blockchain certification, and does that kind of negatively like affect them when it comes to working at startups or big corporations, or maybe the pros and cons of having a cert?
Well, I always think any kind of certification just kind of gives you the verifiable skill level that you can't get unless you can say, I took this class, I studied this many hours, and I have this. A lot of the classes that are free of charge or complimentary, I think you need that certification at the end, and it is something, and I'm sure Naresh could talk more about this, like once you get that certification and you could put that on your LinkedIn, it's the first thing you want on your LinkedIn. You want people to know that you know what you're talking about. And these classes are the best way to get there. It's, you know, the path to the job you want is through education. And again, a certification, to me, I don't see any downside. I would love every degree behind my name if possible. I don't know if Naresh can add anything.
Yeah, sure, Bobby. So certification is just a proof that you have gone through the program. And the program is very, very important because through program, by going through this like training program, it's a structured learning. Otherwise, you'll find a lot of content on Google. But believe me, when I started almost 4 years back, I come from IT background. But it took 6 months for me to learn the concepts, and I had to learn everything by finding whatever material was available on Google. It's not that easy, but if you go through a structured approach, your learning is very fast, it's more effective, and then you can perform better. And when you approach for a job at the time, you can answer questions very confidently. And this certificate is just a proof that you have done that.
That was a great question. Does anybody else have any more questions before I turn you back out into the night? Or more?
Thanks for answering.
Go ahead, Henry.
Oh, I was just saying thanks for answering. Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. I guess I was trying to more understand the cultural background that comes with it. Because I have heard from some of my friends that worked at startups, like whenever they see certification, for example, it's kind of like they see it as more of a structure like you guys were talking about. But I've been hearing that with startups, it's kind of more about your personal projects. And if they see a certification, that could negatively affect them from actually getting that job opportunity. But I mean, you guys have more practical experience on this. I don't know if that's actually true or not. but blockchain is something that's new for everyone.
I have to ask you a question. What industry are you coming from?
So I'm coming from full stack, but I work for a supply chain company.
Supply chain. So if I were interested in blockchain and supply chain, the first thing that I would do was I would go research Mazerac, which is the big shipping company that's trying to build on blockchain for their suppliers. And their information is they've had Forbes magazine's articles, and they're like the leading in supply chain. And then just start reading about it. I know Consensus has a supply chain working group. I know Hyperledger has a supply chain working group. So there's, again, and those working groups, I don't know if anybody really understands the gift of a working group. If you join a working group, again, the learning materials, I'm going to see if I can just do this really quick. The learning materials working group.
So also, Bobby, just to that point, there is let me rephrase, not a working group. There's an industry group focused on supply chain, transportation, and logistics. So yes, you can go to them and they have materials, they've got meeting notes. So that might help you, Henry. If you just want to find out where to start, that might be a good place.
And if my computer ever loads, I'm going to show you the Hyperledger working group world. So I'm on the wiki.hyperledger.org, which is an open page to everyone who wants to go on it. And Consensus and other companies have the same type of internal page. But in this Hyperledger page, if you drop down groups, my computer is so slow, I apologize. Come on. It works every other day, I promise.
It's because of Zoom. It consumes a lot of bandwidth.
Oh.
Yeah, Zoom is writing temporary files for sure that are very high volume.
Okay, let's see if we can go to the Hyperledger homepage and get to the groups that way. So anyway, so there's several groups that have bi-weekly meetings, and you can see the groups right here. So the special interest groups are consortium-based groups that meet bi-weekly to talk about blockchain solutions and how they can work together. Capital Markets is one, and they're doing a lot. Vipin is their leader, who's great, and he does a lot with CBCDs, which is the central bank digital currencies. And the capital markets are constantly talking about what's happening. They have great speakers come in. They had the Bakan from Asia talk about their currency. They had, I think, the people from the Bahamas and the Sand Dollar come in. So they have great speakers in their meetings. Climate Action, they are unbelievable. They are working on the carbon accounting, net zero emissions calculators, so that everyone can calculate their emissions on the same level playing field. So they're kind of making the standards. They have several different can, if you're interested in climate and being on the right side of it, listen in on some of their calls. Again, media and entertainment, healthcare, public sector was how I got involved. And then they also have, again, supply chain, telecom, trade finance. Telecom is interesting. That's where they have industry competitors trying to work together, because if you've ever made a cell phone call, you're bouncing off everybody else's towers and they have to account for that. Blockchain's a great solution for them. So they're working on solutions that will help them deal with their industry competitors as well. So these consortiums are never before seen collaboration from competitors in this open source environment. And I think great things are going to happen from those collaborations. But again, to join these calls, there's a calendar right on the wiki page of the meetings. They scroll. My computer is so slow. You can tell I'm not used to waiting. So every day they have a list of what calls are happening. They're either technical with the projects that are going on, or they're the working groups. So for instance, tomorrow, oh, look, the Giving Chain meeting from the Learning Materials Working Group happens at its mountain time. So it's actually at noon tomorrow. And if you want to join that call, all you need to do is find the link. So every single call has the link. So if you're interested in healthcare, you join the Zoom call. If they ask you to introduce yourself, you just say, hey, I'm just interested in learning what this group is about. and they'll welcome you in and, ask you if you have any questions as they're talking, and you become a member of the community. And it's, again, as simple as just reaching out to where you're interested in. And I guess everybody on this call who's looking at this list of great calls are like, oh, I would like to join that one. Or I mean, I'm sure that's like a shopping list. There's like something everyone can find that would keep them definitely involved in, and again, this is how you can get started writing a white paper. Groups are doing projects that they need documentation. So again, there's positions for all walks of life. Any more questions? We only have a few minutes left. Again, hey, how are you?
I'm good. So I am not necessarily public sector facing, but working with nonprofits, my interest is in connecting AmeriCorps, which is a federal agency that puts volunteers into service around communities, to really support them through the blockchain efforts that are out there. And I'm wondering, is there a nonprofit specific kind of SIG?
Funny you should mention that. It's called the Social Impact. My computer would load quicker. Again, and here's their homepage. You would just go to, again, wiki.hyperledger. And again, Consensus has groups like this. All the companies have working groups. You just have to figure out how to find them. It's usually get involved on their website. And this one, you can just join their mailing list, join a call. You just want to see what they're talking about. You can just join the mailing list. And it should tell you when their meetings are right on each homepage. And again, explore. We encourage you at Hyperledger to lurk through our wiki pages. And
I'm afraid it's too much. It's too much.
It is. It's a lot. It's like, oh.
I will
for someone like me
down that rabbit hole tomorrow.
It is a rabbit hole, and once you head down, it's hard getting out.
Well,
again, we'll post the recording of this meeting on BC Employ if you're interested, and hopefully everybody will join us for the job fair where we'll actually get you guys some jobs. Get headed in the right direction. So have a good night, everybody. And thank you, Nareesh and John and David and Jim and Grace and everyone who helped out today. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby. Take care, everyone.